You've probably seen dozens of alt-fires drop and had no idea if they were worth keeping. Trust me, I get it. After spending over 20 hours farming drill sites, bosses, and story missions, I ended up finding more than 50 unique alt-fires that completely changed how I looked at underbarrel attachments in Borderlands 4. The problem is, there's just too much loot. Every drop has the chance to be better than what you already have, and it's easy to miss something amazing or waste time picking up junk. So in this video, I'm breaking down every major alt-fire into a clear, easy to follow tier list so that by the end, you'll know exactly which ones are worth holding on to and which ones you can ignore. Everything will be timestamped to make it easier to come back to the next time you pick something up and need to know whether it's worth keeping. It's important to note that I tested everything on UVH1, so there may be differences from my results and yours. I also didn't use this in conjunction with my action skills, so you may find that some of these work better with your build. This list is my personal opinion, so I'd love to hear if you think certain alt-fires are better or worse than what I found. Thank you to AOEAH for sponsoring this video, but more about them later. Airstrike allows you to call in a high damage missile wherever you target on the ground. It can be okay for mobbing if everyone is grouped up, but the area of effect is pretty small. If you hit a slow moving boss with it though, it can do above average damage, so we're putting this in the B tier. The Atlas tracker darts are more of a gimmick than anything, and it seems like this has a higher drop rate than other alt-fires. It's in the middle of the road in the C tier, but I do know that it can roll in the TK's wave, meaning all of the projectiles will hone in on the target instead of being in a spread, so look out for that roll. The attack drone is a cool idea, but the damage it does is pretty minuscule compared to what you can do with your own weapon. I'd consider this entirely useless, F tier. The beam tosser is our first S tier selection and can absolutely melt bosses if it bounces into them continuously, as it has high damage roll potential with the ability to ricochet into other targets for mob clearing as well. Make sure to keep an eye out for these at all times. Ah yes, the Bipod, another F tier selection. The only thing this does is give you better accuracy and even sometimes has drawbacks like reduced movement speed. Unless you desperately need help with your aim, never pick these up. The Cleaver was actually one of the first alt-fires I relied on in my early leveling, as it provided a much higher damage output than any of my other weapons. It's perfect for taking down badass enemies or chunking bosses' health, so if you see one, pick it up and try it out for yourself. In the endgame, it might not be as impactful, but it still deserves an A slot. C.O.M.B.O fires an orb that can be shot to deal high AoE damage to those around. The mechanic can take a few tries to get used to, but the above average damage puts it into the B tier. The crank SMG or hand crank alt-fires are a cool idea in that they can turn your guns with slower fire rates into faster firing guns, but in practice it's better to just use an actual automatic. I'd put this into the D tier. The depth sphere is interesting because it slowly moves around spraying tons of bullets, but I haven't found it to be at least average at DPS. Maybe if it rolls with ricochet leading to higher damage output because of the multiple shots, but outside of that it's just not as effective as I would have hoped, making it another addition to the D tier. The Demolition Charge is preferred over other explosives for me because it has the ability to stick to targets and deal decent damage. It is similar to other explosives in that it adds splash damage, so C tier is fair because it's not above average in DPS and can certainly be skipped over in favor of the higher tier alt-fires. Deployable barriers are essentially useless in a game like Borderlands that requires you to keep moving, as they don't provide that great of a benefit. If you're interested in making shields a big part of your playstyle and want buffs added to them, swap to Amon, but please don't pick these up, F tier. Back-to-back F tiers? You betcha. Digital backup is a fun idea in that you can call in a gun with legs to defend you, but in reality the damage output is so low that you barely even notice it. Just ignore these. Double Flintlocks provide high damage and the ability to roll with ricochet, which further increases the damage. Especially in the early game, look out for this to help with badass or boss DPS. It's not strong enough to warrant an S tier selection, but with it being similar to the Cleaver, it settles nicely into the A tier. The Energy Blast, Energy Burst, Energy Discharge, and Exhaust Blast function like a close range shotgun that expels energy, damaging enemies, but only at point blank range. Can it do high damage if you're literally pressed against an enemy? Sure, but the time it takes to fire and the fact that you have to be so close doesn't make it appealing and warrants a D tier selection. Our second S tier selection is the Energy Disc, not because of its standard roll, which would definitely slot it into the A tier given its great damage and ability to hit multiple targets, but because it has the ability to roll with Jacobs, which can almost infinitely hit bosses and one-shot them, please don't skip over these if you see one drop. Unfortunately, I'm still on the lookout for my own Jacobs Energy Disc roll, so today's sponsor, AOEAH.com, is a perfect place to look for any Borderlands items you're still missing, like legendary enhancements or the crit knife. You can use code PEACH for 3% off at checkout. The extra barrel essentially increases overall fire rate, sometimes adding an extra barrel to weapons like sniper rifles. While the per shot damage isn't affected, the overall DPS can be significantly increased, so if you're using a build like Rafa's Bullet Hose or Harlow's Chroma Accelerator that benefits from high fire rate weapons, then keep an eye out for extra extra barrels, especially on weapons that already have high fire rates like SMGs. I don't think this vaults into the A tier, but it certainly is above average, placing it into the B tier. The Flame Blast and Flamethrower function almost identically, shooting out dense incendiary damage, which is especially useful against flesh enemies. However, I wouldn't say its damage output is notable compared to the rest of the alt fires we're discussing, so it'll find its home square in the C tier. The Fuel Rod fires a decently high damage projectile that is comparable to other alt fires, placing it into the C tier. The Gas Trap places a corrosive damage pool on the ground, but since it doesn't slow the enemy significantly, the tick damage isn't sustained. You're better off using a corrosive weapon to apply the status effect directly to the enemies, making the Gas Trap an F tier selection. The Gaus Gun does decent damage, nothing crazy notable, and slides right into the average at C. If you hate getting pulled into the gravity orbs that you see in the higher UVH levels, then you can return the favor with gravity wells, which are sometimes called Singularity grenade launchers. Pull enemies in to make shooting them easier, B tier. The grenade launcher is pretty straightforward. Good damage, ability to splash, and can roll with elemental effects, B tier. The kill drone functions very similar to the attack drone and honestly feels useless. Don't even bother with it, F tier. The knife launcher is almost identical to the Cleaver in that it fires a high damage projectile that can ricochet with the right roll. Not quite S tier, as the few in the S tier are insane, but certainly above the average and warrants an A tier selection. The laser wire is a slow moving beam that damages enemies it passes through. It's not very wide, limiting the overall effectiveness, pushing it down into the D category. The lightning beam functions similar to the flamethrower, but has the ability to chain to multiple enemies, increasing the overall damage output when mobbing, earning it a slot above average in B tier. The MIRV grenade launcher does decent explosive damage, but not much else, C tier. Overcharge feels similar to the extra barrel and helps boost the damage output of the weapon you're using. It's a step above average, putting it into the B tier. The Proxy mine launcher can essentially set explosive traps, dealing damage when enemies come within range of them. They don't do enough damage to surpass something like a grenade launcher or rockets, so they fall into D tier. The Railgun feels similar to the knife launcher or double Flintlocks, helping put out high damage with a single shot, but I haven't found them to be as effective, leaving the Railgun in the B tier. There's a few different types of rocket launchers with a slight variation on behavior. You'll see rolls with big rockets, micro rockets, rocket pods, ripper rockets, zip rockets, macro rockets, and potentially others. Overall, I'd say these are squarely in the C tier. They have the ability to roll with higher damage than other alt fires, but if you're looking for big explosive damage, you're better off just using your ordnance slot for this. In the early game, you may get away with relying on the rocket alt fires, but you'll find later in the end game that these can't compete with legendaries. Rolling Thunder is another example of explosive damage in an alt fire form. Is it usable? Sure, but it doesn't stand out to me. C tier. The Seeker missiles function separately from the rocket launchers as they go hunting for enemies rather than going to where you precisely aimed. To be honest, they were pretty hit or miss, no pun intended, so I wouldn't say they're good or bad, just meh. C tier. The shock field could maybe be effective if multiple enemies are together, but it's pretty useless for single enemy damage. Feel free to skip over these, D tier. The Shrapnel Cannon can deal above average alt fire damage as it rolls with multiple projectiles similar to a shotgun. It can roll with pretty high stats for early game, so this deserves a B tier selection. Spread launchers are the third S tier selection and my personal favorite. So much so that I made an entire video on trying to get one to drop. They have the ability to roll with insane damage, making it perfect for one-shotting bosses. There may be better rolls than what you find, but there is never a bad spread launcher roll. Never pass these up, S tier by a mile. The sticky shotgun functions a bit different than your normal shotgun as it applies high damage explosives to enemies and can fire multiple rounds. These do superior damage to most alt fires, firmly placing it into the A tier, just barely outside of S. The support drone was the most surprising alt fire to me because on the surface, the other drones like attack or kill drones have been F tier selections. However, keeping the support drone around to provide constant heals feels more like something you'd find in a skill tree rather than just laying on the ground or in a chest. It applies constant healing to you and has a pretty quick cooldown. You can keep this as an option in your 4 weapon slots to provide passive healing no matter the activity you're playing. I'm willing to say that this is an A tier alt fire. The target marker can help you increase the overall damage the enemy you shoot takes, making it great against high health enemies. Functions similar to the damage payload augment, so this pushes it up into the B tier. Our last S tier selection is the Taser, as it can do massive damage due to its ability to roll with multiple tasers, leading to incredible DPS. While multiple tasers aren't easy to find and neither is the enhancement that increases Vladov underbarrel damage, pairing these two together can make this feel absolutely broken. The Tether Snare is fine, not much to note, so it's a D tier. Underbarrel shotguns, sometimes called micro shotguns or just plain shotgun, do nothing different than a normal shotgun you can find laying around, so you're better off just using an actual shotgun. C tier. And our final alt fire is the Vial Launcher, which allows for run-of-the-mill corrosive damage, rounding out the C tier. If you want to see the best ways to farm for alt fires, check out the video on the left. If you want to get caught up on the entire Borderlands story, the video on the right is perfect for you.